All right, welcome to another video. So today we are going to be talking about PromptFlow, and we're going to get you started with PromptFlow and be able to deploy your own PromptFlow inside of Azure Machine Learning. This is kind of what the ending is going to look like. So you're actually going to have a flow that you can work with and manipulate. You'll be able to chat with it interactively in the console. You'll be able to deploy this to an online endpoint, which in the end is going to look something like this, to where we actually, in Azure Machine Learning, will have an online endpoint with all the code that you have put together and deployed to a container instance, a Kubernetes container, that you have the ability to do auto-scaling and even do monitoring of that if you so want to. Keep in mind that when this is deployed, it is just your code that makes the PromptFlow work. It does not include the OpenAI model. So when you make a call to OpenAI, you're still going to be incurring charges for each 1,000 tokens that you actually hit. And you'll be able to interact with it as an online endpoint if you want to test it. Plus, you'll be able to get a scored URL you can hand off to a developer. So if you want to ask a question of the OpenAI, you can actually run it through the scoring mechanism with the key, and you get sample code for Python, for C, and for R. So to get us started on this is what you're going to need: an Azure subscription. And we're going to walk through all of this. I'm going to assume you already have an Azure subscription and you already have GPT 3.5 or GPT 4 access. But we're going to create a resource group, go ahead and create the services for GPT 3.5, cognitive service search, also known as Azure AI search now, or Azure AI document intelligence, depending on which document you look at, Azure Machine Learning service, and inside of an Azure Machine Learning service, we're actually going to also create a compute. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. All right, so here we go. We're going to start off as we are now in the Azure Machine Learning portal. First thing we're going to do is create a resource. I want to create a resource group. And we should get some results for a resource group. Let's see what comes back. Resource group, create. We are going to call this RG, because I call all my resource groups. They start with RG, P-R-O-M-P-T. Prompt, we're going to put this in US East, and next we're going to skip on the tags. We're going to make sure that our validation passes and do a create. This will take about a split second to create. So once we have the resource group, now we need to start putting our services in here. So the services that we're going to be doing are going to be, and I'm going to search first for cognitive search. It has been renamed to document intelligence or AI search. So we're going to go here, select Azure AI Search and click Create. And it's going to ask us a few questions, and we're going to put this one in East US also. So make sure I get that right on each one of these, because I want to make sure everything lives in the same region. This one, I'm just going to call it Search. Let's see, lowercase letters, always, search, yeah. We're going to call it that so we can find it. We're going to keep the pricing tier standard right now, so we don't have to. We're only going to create one index in this for the purpose of the demo. Keep in mind, for each of the services you do create, some of them will incur costs, even when you're not using them, so be cognizant of that. So if you wanted to do this as just a demo or a lab, you could actually just follow these instructions, run all this in one day, and then delete everything at the end of the day. So we're going to go ahead and create that, and that's going to take a couple of minutes for it to create, and I'll jump the video ahead when we get to that point so you can actually watch it as we go through. And when this is complete, we're going to create another service. All right, so our resource is deployed. So now we can actually go to RG prompt, back to our resource group, and see that we have a cognitive search out here now. So now I'm going to go here and just do a create in the resource group, because we also need to deploy in Azure Machine Learning instance. So we'll look for that and do a create Azure Machine Learning. And we're going to put in on our resource group, name of it. I'm going to call this AML-prompt. I don't think I've used that one. We're going to put this in East US with our other resources. And we're going to just take the defaults on the storage account, the key vault, and the application insights. And container registry, we're not going to worry about that. For networking, I'm going to go ahead and keep it as public. Identity, let's see, encryption, we're going to use Microsoft Managed Keys. Identity, just go ahead and keep the defaults. No tags for this one. Let it pass validation. And then we can actually create our resource. This one actually runs pretty quickly, because what it's really doing is just creating a place where this lives. And once we get this set up, we'll actually have an Azure Machine Learning resource created, and then we'll go into AML after that, into the Azure Machine Learning workspace. We'll show that in just a minute. We'll see how long this takes. I may have to speed this up when we get ready to edit the video. All right, through the magic of video editing, our resource is complete. So now we can go back to our resource group, and now we'll see that we have quite a few more services out here that Azure Machine Learning created, as well as our search shop. So we still need one more resource that we need to create, which is OpenAI. If you have OpenAI in a different resource group, you could probably use that, but I'm going to go ahead and create it in here. Obviously, if you've got multiple people using OpenAI with multiple products, you may have to think about that. In this case, I'm going to call it OAI. Oh, what should I call it? OpenAI GPT. Give it a nice boring name. Pricing tier, standard 0. Subdomain is already in use. Go figure. OpenAI. All right, let's change this to OpenAI Shep. That's probably not in use. Nope, we can use that one. So we're going to go next. Network is going to be public, all networks. Tags, no tags. Running validation, make sure everything's good. Now we can do a create. And this will create pretty quickly also, so you won't have to wait for very long. But those are all the services that we're going to need to get started so we can get into PromptFlow. So let's see if this goes by pretty quickly, and we'll go to our resource group and go ahead and get started. All right, our resource group is populated with lots of services now, which is what we wanted. Now, the first thing we're going to need to do, and let me make the screen a little bit larger for you. First thing we're going to need to do is go into our Azure OpenAI resource and go to model deployments. The reason we need to do this is because we're going to have to add some OpenAI deployments, some models out here so that we have them available. I'm going to use GPT-3.5 Turbo 16K, and we're going to give the deployment name the exact same name as the model so I don't get confused later. And all you have to do is a create, and it will create it. Now we need one more out here also, and that's the ADA embedding model, because we're going to need that also, because that's going to translate our data into a vector embedding so we can search it against a vector database. So we're going to call that the same thing so I can figure it out later and remember what it is. Now, after you create these, even though they show up in the console immediately, it takes about 2 or 3 minutes before you can actually go in and access one of these. So if you wanted to chat with us right now, you might have to wait just a little bit of time. So if I were to type in hello, it's like the API is not ready yet. That takes a couple of minutes, and that's okay. Just be prepared for that. So it's not that big of a deal. So what we're going to do now is go back to the Azure portal and go to our new resource group, our gprompt. We've got our OAI Shep set up, and we are going to have to come back here in a little while and get this endpoint and one of these keys, but we'll actually do that in a few seconds. I'll go ahead and leave this up, and we'll come back to it in a minute. Let's go back to the Azure portal. Let's go to the resource group we just created with all our fresh new services in there. And now we're going to go into the Azure Machine Learning. This is going to take us to the AML Studio, which is where we're going to be doing all of our work today. So I'll make this a little bit bigger. But what we're going to be doing is going into PromptFlow, creating a new prompt, and we're going to choose one of these. Actually, the one we're going to choose is the multi-round Q&A on your data. But before we get to that, we need to create a compute instance. So we're going to go down here to our compute under Manage, and we're going to create a new compute instance. So right now, easy to do, just click on New, and you're going to see what you have quota for out here, and it'll tell you how much quota you have for each one of these. I'm going to create, these two cost about 29 cents an hour. This one's the same price, and I get more memory. So I'm going to click on the E4DS, and you can choose any one you want. I'm going to set this to shut down after 120 minutes of inactivity. So you can also add a schedule if you wanted to. So I could change this to East Coast time, which I do this on all my compute instances anyway, because just in case I go off and forget, I don't have to worry about it. And we'll say that every day at 8 p.m., if this instance is still running, just shut it down. So we're going to set that right there. Click on Next. I'm not going to worry about security. I'm not going to add any other applications. Not going to worry about any tags. And then you go to the review screen. Now you can do a create. Now this will take a couple of minutes to create, anywhere from 1 to 5 minutes. I've had really good luck with it lately that I can typically get a compute instance created in about 5 minutes or less. So when this is, we'll come back and check on this in a few minutes. In the meantime, we actually have to go into our PromptFlow, because to get started, we need to worry about some of the tabs we have out here: Connections, Runtime, and Vector Index. Connections give Azure Machine Learning access to your other products that you have in your resource group. So the first thing we're going to do is go ahead and set up Azure OpenAI. So in this case, I'm just going to call it OpenAI, so it'll be super simple for me to figure it out. Provider is Azure OpenAI. Then we're going to select my subscription. We're going to select the names of what I created, the Azure OpenAI, and the one I created most recently was the OAI SHEP. So we're going to select that one. Now we need to go back and get that API key that we had talked about. So we're going to go back to here to where I had OAI SHEP, and we're going to grab that first key, paste it into here. And anytime you can pause these videos if I'm moving too fast. I've done this a few times already, so I'm getting better at it. That's the nice thing about video. If you get stuck or somewhere you need to research something, you can pause it anytime. And in this case, we're going to go ahead and leave the API type as Azure, which it is, and the API version we're going to leave as preview. And that may change over time too, so don't be surprised. So that's our first connection. And we need that connection because for PromptFlow to be able to access our OpenAI, we need to have this connection set up. So the next one we're going to do is cognitive search. Okay, so in this case, I'm going to call it search. Same thing I called the other service, SHEP, so I can easily identify it. Cognitive search, then we're going to go to the API key for cognitive search. So we're going to go back here and back out to our resource group, go to search SHEP, which is our cognitive search service. We're going to go to security, which is down here, or settings, actually, it's under keys, and we'll see that we have a primary and secondary key. So I can grab that key, go ahead and pass that in there. The next thing we're going to need is the API base. Now the API base is not in the same place where the keys are. The API base is under overview. So what we're going to do is copy that out of the URL up here. That's my API base right there under URL. Now we're going to paste that API base for our cognitive search there, and we're going to go ahead and save that. So now we have the two main things we need. Now, there may be a circumstance where if you ever wanted to create a Azure Content Safety, you could actually go in, because Content Safety is a service that exists in Azure, so you would have to add that to your resource group also. We're not going to do that today because I'm using Azure OpenAI, which comes with its own Content Safety. There's no point in doing it twice. So we don't need to worry about anything more than that. Now we can check on our compute, because the next thing we need to do, we'll see our compute's up and running. So we're going to go back to PromptFlow now. And we're going to add a runtime because our PromptFlow needs a machine that it can run on. So what we're going to do is give it a name. Let's go ahead and search for what we have down here. We'll see that we have one running already. So I'm going to just grab that same name because it's going to show up in my PromptFlow as the same name so I don't get it confused with anything else either, and just create that. First thing it's going to do is auto restart compute instance. All right, so we're going to say confirm because if you don't do that, PromptFlow won't be able to use it. So we're going to confirm this. This takes about 3 or 4 minutes for it to restart the compute instance because it's going to add some security and software that it's going to install on there for us to make it PromptFlow friendly. So this takes some time to run, and you'll see that it's not available right now. When we're done with that, the next thing we're going to do is come in and create our vector index. So we're going to pause the video, wait for the compute to create, and then we're going to go ahead and get started with creating our vector index and jump right into it. All right, now we got our compute running. As you can see out here, it's all ready to go. So if I refresh, I show that I've got my machine all set up. Gives me the size, and we also know that if I drill into it, I can actually see if I've got a schedule. Should show the schedule on here somewhere. Actually, the schedule's on the other one. This is just a runtime that we have created because we're back because we've got our connections created so far, our OpenAI and our cognitive search. We've got our runtime created. The next thing that we're actually going to do is create our vector index. You know, I like the fact you can do this because this makes it a little bit easier. And the reason we're creating a vector index is because, once again, just like the other videos we did, we're doing a RAG pattern, a retrieval augmented generation, which means I want to load some data from PDFs, and it's actually going to be our standard HR docs, our make-believe human resource docs that we could go through. And now what we can do is this is going to ask you the name of this, and I'm just going to call it HR docs. And I'm going to pull this up from my machine. So I've actually got some folders out here already. I've got a folder out here already with my role library, my employee handbooks, Perks Plus, Northwind Standard Benefits, Northwind Health Plus Benefits, and our benefit options. And I'm going to upload those. And it's going to say, are you sure you want to do that? I'm like, absolutely. So it comes up and tells us, here's the list of all the things you have, all the ones you want to upload. And you can notice that you have quite a few file types available to you. So even if you had PowerPoints or Word documents or even Python files, you could upload those as well. Vector store, where we're going to use the Azure AI Search Index. And this is the cognitive search because it found it from the connection, so it knows it's out here. So now we can click on next, choose the connection type. We're going to use OpenAI, which that came from our connections also. And then it's going to say, what do you want to use for compute? So in my case, I want to use a compute cluster. Let's see where those things live. I'm going to use the compute cluster I already created because I don't want to create another compute instance. So I'm going to select compute instance down here and go ahead and choose the one that's already running. And then I'm going to click on next. And it's going to give us kind of a rundown of what it's actually doing. Then it's going to create the index. Now what this is going to do is create an Azure Machine Learning pipeline that will actually go out, read those docs, chunk them, and then come back and give us the ability to get them in the index so we can search them at a later time. And if you click on job details, what you're going to see out here is an Azure Machine Learning pipeline running under jobs where you can actually see all of this come together. And you can minimize it a little bit so you can take out. Now this takes about 10 minutes to run. So we're going to stop the video again, let this finish, and then we're going to come back to it. Okay. All right, we've got our job complete now. We can see that the Azure pipeline has completed. All the steps are done. So now what we can do is go ahead and close this, go back to this. And we'll go, if we look at the vector index, we'll see that we now have a vector index called HR docs. We can look at the job details, which will take us back to jobs so we can see the pipeline. And then we can actually look at the index data. We're going to need to, I'm going to leave this page open because we're going to need this data store URI in a few minutes. If you don't know where this lives, it can be really confusing to find because the documentation actually tells you how to build this manually, which can be a little bit of a pain. So I'm going to leave that up, go back to here, go to PromptFlow once again, and now I'm going to create my PromptFlow. So in this case, what I want to do is take this multi-round Q&A. So this is going to take and give us the ability to, we're going to do this as chat HR docs. So we're going to clone that. Takes a minute for it to clone, not too long. But what this is going to give us, it's going to go ahead and pre-populate everything for us so we don't have to worry about doing anything. We've got all of our options up here. We'll see that our compute runtime's already been selected because for this to run, we're actually going to have to do this. Now we have some work we need to do. And I can't remember all of it, but I know first thing we have to do is modify query with history. So it's going to ask you some questions like, you know, where's your OpenAI connection? And we set that up when we did the runtimes earlier. So it knows that for the deployment name, we're going to use GPT Turbo 16K. So it's good with that. It knows that we need to have the OpenAI. And then it's going to give it some history about, you know, given the following conversation, user's next question, rephrase the question. So it's going to give it some instructions. And you have the ability to modify this all you want if you want to. But there is one place we're going to need to make a change. Now, for the embed the question, this is going to be the embedding model. That's why we actually needed to have the text embedding. So what it's going to do is take the text embedding here and take it and convert it into a vector so that we can actually come back out and figure out, you know, what we wanted to do to search the index. Make sure we got that right. GPT Turbo, embed the question, inputs, we close that, that's why I didn't see it. Now we've got this other one. Now by default, this thing actually comes with the RAG sample index. And if we go look at that, we open it up, we'll see that it's pointing to a demo, basically index that we don't want to use. That's where we're going to come back here, and I want to grab this URI right here, and I'm going to pass that in and replace this. And it's kind of a long, gnarly index, but that's what we actually need to get this set up. And we'll see if this actually works. And one thing you can do to test it, get out of the way here, go back to inputs, and just run that and see if it has access to the index. We'll see if it does or not. If it doesn't have access, I'll probably have to pause the video and do a little bit of work on it, and I'll come back and tell you what I did. But you can run this one cell by itself just to make sure it can get a connection to this. And it ran completed, so that's great. Let's see what else we need to change down here. This is the generate Python prompt text, and you can see it's got some code in here. And the neat thing about being able to integrate all this with Python is the fact that you can change these to where if you don't want to search for the question from an index, what you could do is gut this module, replace it with a Python module, and have it make a query to a SQL server. So that's kind of awesome. Now we are going to make some changes because this is our system prompt right here. You are an AI system designed to answer questions from and form and source citation. So we're going to make some changes to this. And I'm going to copy it out. I've already got it written, so we don't have to worry about me spending 10 minutes writing this. So what I'm going to do is paste my prompt in here, because we're telling it that it's basically much like the other two demos I did, the other two videos, that you answer questions related to Contoso Electronics Employee Handbook, Perks Plus, and Northwind Healthcare, HEAL healthcare. It's pretty good with spelling, thank goodness. Cancel, I don't want to get away from this window. You'll be given context and chat history and ask a question based on context. And if the question is asked that does not relate to the topic, please respond with, I am a Contoso Electronics Company assistant. I can help you with HR or Northwind health questions. So that way we can try and prevent a little bit of jailbreak. We can validate and parse the input, make sure that's going to work okay. Validation passed, so I didn't make any errors. And now, if I got everything correctly, I should be able to save this here. And if I'm lucky, let's see what happens. Let's do a chat and see what happens. So this has got some preloaded chat that I'm not going to worry about. So I'm going to start a new chat session once this actually gets saved and starts running. And what it's going to do, if we close that, we'll see that it actually had some other stuff out here from the demo that was created. What is my favorite question included in perks? Let's see if this works because I haven't tested this. You just saw me set the whole thing up, so we don't even know if it's going to work. Aha, empty connection with chat context. So what did I miss here? Aha, chat context. So we need a OpenAI connection, deployment name. It'll pick the deployment that it needs, whether it's an embedding model or an OpenAI model. And we've got topic, presence, penalty. Temperature is 0, so be very strict. And now we're going to save that. And let's do the chat anyway. So we'll close that and ask the question again. And it's saving it on for us anyway. And while this is running, if you were to go look, you can actually see that it tells you where in the prompt it is when it's actually running through this. So if there's an error, it'll pop up here. Let's wait for that to complete, and we can open the chat back up. So here we go. What's included in Perks Plus? Perks Plus covers a wide range of fitness activities. So we got a good answer. And it gave us where, if we have access to that PDF, that we can go find it. What is the difference between healthcare plans? Just to trip it up a little bit. See if we can't get healthcare plans. Let's see what it says about that. Because we're going to try a jailbreak in here also. I'm not going to try very hard at the jailbreak because I don't have the jailbreak actually. There is a service that manages that for us. I don't have that set up, but I want to see what it does if I ask it like, who is Harry Potter? Because it's not supposed to answer that question. So it didn't come back with an answer for that one. So that's kind of what we would get. Let's see if we can't. What is the difference between Northwind healthcare plans? Let's see if we can get some information, because sometimes you need to give it more context, and that's not uncommon. In the other demos I've done for the videos, you've probably seen me do something similar where sometimes you have to give it more context to be able to answer a question. See if it comes back and tells us anything. Because it's kind of a hard question because we're asking it to compare two different health plans. And then it comes back and gives us basically Northwind Health Plus. Northwind House offers two plans, Northwind Health Plus and Northwind Standard. And it gives us where we can find the benefit options and if we wanted to go look that up. Now, the most important question, who is Harry Potter? Let's see if it'll answer that one. And this is basically an attempt. It's not an attempt at a jailbreak, but we're asking it a question it should not answer for us. So that's kind of what I'm after right here. Because we gave it instructions in the prompt engineering not to answer anything unrelated to the documents that we have access to. I am a Contoso Electronics Company assistant. Can I help you with a Contoso or Northwind Health question? Awesome. All right, so that's already been saved. We really don't need to save it again. What we can do now is actually deploy this. So we're going to give it that crazy name. We're going to set this up on relatively kind of a large server. I'm going to change the instance count to 1. Sometimes it won't let you do that in Azure Machine Learning. It gets angry if you drop the instance count. But if you're doing a development endpoint, you may want to do that. So we're going to go ahead and take all the defaults. Next. And it's going to tell it, where we're actually getting information from, which means that this will reach out to Azure OpenAI when it runs. And we're going to go ahead and create that. So this takes a few minutes for it to create. And what it will do is it'll show up as an endpoint down here so you can monitor it once this actually gets started. It's in progress. Let me refresh here. There we go. So it's starting to show up. So what this is going to do, and this takes about 10 minutes, 5 to 10 minutes for it to create, and it's going to give us a REST endpoint. So when this is done deploying, we're going to come back and look at it, and I'm going to show you a couple of tricks you can do with it. All right, so our deployment is complete. So now let's go play around with it. Let's see. First thing I'd like to do is go and do a test. And first thing we can probably do is just type in hello, because this is the first thing you should do. And we get an error. So what do we do about this? Luckily, there is a documentation page that covers this very error, and it's not uncommon. If you get this, don't panic. We can solve it relatively easily. What we actually need to do is go to the resource group where all of our current services live. We're going to go to Identity and Access Management. We're going to click on Add, and we're going to click on Add Role Assignment. What we need to look for is Azure ML Data, and we'll see that we get Azure ML Data Scientist, and then we're going to click Next. So at that point, we're going to look for a managed identity. We're going to select members, and the managed identity that we're going to want to look for is going to be machine learning online endpoints. So let's see if we can find it from here. Not there. User assigned? Nope. All identities, search by name, and what we need to look for is the online endpoint that we actually gave our Azure Machine Learning online endpoint, which is v sub w. Let's go double check and make sure that's right. So we can see it in the tab up here. That is the name of our online endpoint. So we're going to go back here, click on Select, and we'll see that we have the AML Prompt v sub w. Click on Next, Review and Assign. So this is going to take a couple of minutes. So after we do that, what's going to happen is, and I'm going to include this link for this particular troubleshooting doc in the YouTube notes, so you can actually pull this up. Problem is, it's going to take about probably 5 minutes. Oh, look, it works. We got access pretty quickly. Don't be surprised if you actually, because typically in Azure Identity world, it may take several minutes for you to get this back. But now we have a working, what is included in Perks Plus. But the nice thing is you have the ability to chat, so you know that if you give your developer this endpoint, the REST endpoint, and this key, and a sample code of Python, C# or R, you'll know they'll be able to get this working and basically get going with this. All right, so I've got another video I want to do later. This will get you started. You've got an online endpoint right now you can hand off to a developer. You've got your prompt flow that you've created. You've gone through everything. All of it's working. So now you can actually start going to town on the RAG pattern using PromptFlow in Azure Machine Learning. Next couple of videos, probably the next one I'm going to do is the evaluate. So the evaluate's really interesting because that gives you the ability to test your models to make sure they're behaving properly, even do some jailbreaks. We'll talk about this in a future video. And I'm also going to be doing another video where we talk about Azure AI Studio, which will be replacing PromptFlow at some date in the near future. So it doesn't mean that all this was in vain. But we are going to be coming, all of these tools that we see in PromptFlow and Azure Machine Learning are going to be moved to the Azure AI Studio. So we'll be looking at that in a future video also. Anyway, hope you enjoyed this. Thank you for your time today.